Hey, Bill O'Reilly here. Welcome to the No Spin News, Monday, November 17th, 2025. Stand up for your country. I'm a little discombobulated. You got the allergy thing going on. I dodged it for the first 2.5 months of autumn. Then wham! Okay, so I'm not complaining. I mean, I'm not on the disabled list. I'm ready to go. But I'm a little discombobulated. And I don't like taking all that medicine stuff, because they say, it's non-drowsy. Yeah, it's like that. Anyway, we'll get through it. We got a lot of interesting things to tell you. So get ready for some hysteria about Epstein. But here's the kicker. So Congress is going to vote tomorrow on whether to release the so-called Epstein files. I don't even know if there are any files, but there's data, definitely data. And Congress will vote to release it. And so it'll have to be released. And President Trump, and I'll explain in a moment, has changed his position here a little bit. But that could change back, But it's not going to be released until 30 days. If Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, wants to hold it up, it gets held up for 30 days. Doesn't matter. The media is desperate. There's no big story for them to crush now. So they'll speculate. We don't do that. But we are following this very, very closely because there's a lot of important things associated with it politically. I don't happen to believe there's going to be any major news breaking about Epstein. But I could be wrong. And we'll report it accurately if there is. So the talking points this evening is President Trump's moderation over the weekend. Okay? Interesting. So there's 4 areas. The first are on tariffs. And I had always said when the tariffs took place that we would not know if they were successful till the end of the year. Well, the end of the year is about here. They have been successful in raising money for America. They have not been successful in driving down prices. So it's a split decision. And the prices are what's going to hold up the Trump administration for the next 12 months. You got to get them down to win the midterms. Okay. So over the weekend, President Trump said he's going to drop tariffs on beef, coffee, tropical fruit, bananas, avocados, coconuts, pineapples, oranges, tomatoes, pepper, limes, vanilla beans, mangoes, fertilizers, and other stuff. This is an attempt to drive grocery store prices down. Now, I learned over the weekend that the reason that beef, steak, and ground beef is so high is because we used to buy a lot of Mexican meat. But we can't now because there's some kind of parasite thing down there. And the United States Agricultural Division says you can't import Mexican beef. Right away, the price of beef goes up. It's all about supply and demand, as you know. Okay? I didn't know that. But some hideous bug or something that has infected the cattle in Mexico, and we can't buy that cattle. Boom, our prices for beef go up. That's what that Argentinian thing was all about. So now we're going to buy beef from Argentina. I don't know, it might be too late on the beef front. The others, I think, will fall pretty fast. Okay? So I can afford anything I want to eat. I'm lucky, fortunate, and I know it. But I'm not eating a lot of steak and ground beef. I'm doing it to do my part to drive prices down. I eat chicken, fish, shellfish, shrimp, that kind of thing. But I can't remember the last time I ordered a $75 steak in a restaurant. No. And again, I can afford it, but if everybody thought the way that I did, meat and beef prices would not be nearly as high. So that's just me. I mean, that's what I do. All right. So that's a change. The tariffs are being lifted to try to get American food prices down. Second, Mamdani. So you remember that President Trump called him a communist. and he was going to withhold all federal funds from New York and drive this guy nuts. That was on November 3rd, Truth Social. Well, over the weekend, he said, well, I'm going to work at a meeting with Mamdani. Mamdani wants to meet with Trump. Of course he would. All right, billions of dollars of federal money flows into New York City. So there'll probably be a meeting. Here's what the president said, quote, the mayor of New York would like to meet with us. We'll work something out. He'll come to Washington. We want to see everything work out well for New York. Moderation, right? So Mamdani will probably get his meeting. And here, this was a surprise. That wasn't surprising to me. But this one was Maduro, the dictator, heinous dictator, awful, in Venezuela. So as you know, the United States moving the USS Ford aircraft carrier down there and other ships, saber rattling about Maduro. Well, now the president is saying he'd consider talks with Maduro. Maduro's desperate. He knows his life is like this. So Maduro will have to talk to him. I don't think there's going to be a lot of moderation here. I think President Trump will say, look, time to get out, Nick. We'll let you go where you want, but you're not going to be there much longer. Go the hard way or the easy way. That's probably what that conversation is going to be. Okay? I'm guessing, don't have any direct knowledge, but I know President Trump as well as anybody knows him, and I would think that would be the message. But he won't deliver that message, the president won't, until he sees Maduro face to face. Okay, that's not going to be a public thing. Finally, Epstein in this situation, the president was against. When I talked to him on St. Patrick's Day of this year, he wasn't against releasing the data from Epstein that the Department of Justice has, because we talked about it. Then he was against releasing it. Now he's not against releasing it again, but who knows tomorrow. This changes back and forth. But here's what you need to know. President Trump knows exactly what the DOJ has. Exactly. I understand there are a few references to him in the Epstein data, but they're not anything that would be embarrassing or bad. And this is the problem, that Epstein knew thousands of people and associated at a very high level with people in New York City. If you just dump the data, then all of those names will be out there, and then people who don't like those names will try to hurt other people, families too. That's what I told President Trump. If it's vetted, for example, Epstein flew down to the Virgin Islands where he owned property. There's a manifest that has to be filed. If your name's on the manifest, that comes out. Justice Department got to put it out. That's vetted information. You're on a plane with Epstein. I have no compunction about that. And then if the press asks you why you're on a plane, you got to tell them. Okay? But if you're just in a meeting with Epstein and 5, 7 other guys or gals, and you don't have anything to do with them, it was a business meeting of some kind, why should your name be put in that poison ground? That's what I told Cuomo on Wednesday. You might remember that. Chris Cuomo on News Nation, I said, look, you can use this stuff to smear people, to really hurt them. Cuomo goes, I don't care. I want to see it. And I said, well, that's not right. And he goes, no, let the people decide. How can the people decide? We don't have investigative abilities or subpoena privileges. We don't know. All we know is what's there. We can't put it into context. And the Justice Department's not going to go down 1,000 names and explain every one of them, because they don't even know half them. See what I mean? So this thing is just, it's out of control now. It'll get more out of control, and we'll report on it honestly. So anyway, those are the 4 moderations over the weekend. Tonight, the president addresses McDonald's owners, operators, and suppliers in Washington. He's got to talk about beef, right? McDonald's lives and dies off beef. So that's what's going on tonight. The tax extension deadline may have passed, but for millions of Americans, the real trouble is just beginning. If you miss the October 15th deadline or owe back taxes, the IRS is ramping up enforcement. Every day you wait makes it worse. The IRS can charge a penalty of 5% per month, up to 25% of your total tax bill just for not filing. That's on top of what you already owe. The good news? There is still time for Tax Network USA to help you. Whether you are self-employed or a business owner, even if your books are a mess, they have got you covered. They specialize in resolving financial chaos and getting you back on track. Your consultation is 100% free. So please call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/bill. All right. So joining us now from El Paso, Texas, is Dylan Corbett. He is the executive director of Hope Border Institute. Okay. First thing, when 10 to 15 million migrants enter the USA under the Biden administration, did you or your organization object to that?
Hey, Bill. It's good to have you. It's good to be with you. Great to be on your program. Thanks for the invitation. It's a good question. I think there was the perception that not everything was as orderly as it could have been under the Biden administration. And I think we were certainly vocal about some real criticisms that we had. The way that they enforced immigration law at the border, the way that they really didn't coordinate the arrivals, they didn't do enough to coordinate it in a secure, in an orderly, in a safe way here at the border, the way that they didn't coordinate the arrival of people into many of the interior cities like we saw in New York, that generated perceptions of chaos, that generated the perception that the system wasn't working. And I think that we were fairly critical. There were also a number of people, because they did take some real steps in the direction of increased enforcement at the border. And here in El Paso, for example, during the Biden administration, we saw the numbers of people skyrocketing, the numbers of people who were dying at the border skyrocketing because there was no real way.
And Holman made that point. But look, we researched your organization. We didn't find anything that you objected to the open border policies of the Biden administration. No statement, no interview by you, nothing. So you might have been disturbed by the chaotic aspect of it, but you certainly didn't come out and say, look, we need to stop this. So Trump gets elected, he stops it almost immediately. So what you saw and your agency had to deal with disappeared in about 45 days. Did you object to Trump stopping it?
Well, I think that we all agree. I think Americans, whether they're on the right or on the left, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, that we need to have a well-managed border.
Okay, but what Trump did, though, let's get specific, not theoretical. Theory gets us nowhere in this interview. Trump stopped it. Do you object to the way he did it?
I certainly have some issues with the way he did it because
give me one objection. What did he do that you don't like?
That there's a cost to doing what the president did. The president basically, he shredded our system of asylum, and he shredded our system of receiving refugees. People who are fleeing, they're fleeing wars, they're fleeing serious violence, they're fleeing serious causes of poverty, which are driving them to flee and to migrate to our border in search of protection.
Okay, now, so you think that he shredded it. Now, the official policy of Homeland Security is you can apply for asylum in the United States. You have to go to a port of entry to do so. You can't just be caught in the desert in Texas or Arizona, say to the ICE agent or the Border Patrol agent, I want asylum, which is what Biden allowed. That was the big thing. They disregarded, the Biden administration, the law Congress passed in 1952 saying all asylum must go through the American consulate or embassy in the home country or in the American ports of entry. Now, Trump is enforcing that. You can still apply for asylum here. So you have an objection to that?
Well, I'd question that a little bit, Bill, because I think that the system of asylum really isn't being respected, neither at ports of entry nor in between ports of entry. I'd quibble a little bit with how you characterize asylum law, because people do have the right under our federal law to apply for asylum, even if they were to cross in between
But
ports
they
of
can
entry.
still do that. They don't have the right to apply for it on the ground. They have to go to a port of entry or an American facility in their home country. That's the law. That's what it says.
There we'd have to disagree, because right now you're not able to go to a consulate in Mexico or in Central America to apply to asylum. It simply doesn't
Why not?
exist.
You
If
can
came to
go.
a port of entry, I can tell you right now from my experience, I'm only just a couple of miles from the port of entry here in El Paso. If you were to apply for asylum there, you're going to get turned back. You're going to get sent back to Mexico. So the system right now is not functional. We don't have an asylum system in the United States right now.
Let me look into that, because from what I understand, it is still a functioning system. But if you're right, you're right, and I'll report it. Okay, let's move ahead. So you've got now between 10 and 15 new migrants that weren't here in the first Trump administration that are now here. Mm-hmm. What is the responsibility of the United States government to support those people?
Yeah, you raise a good question. And I think you said earlier in the segment that the United States government really does have a responsibility to know who's coming into our country. And we do.
Yes.
Important. We've got to manage the border so that it's done in a safe way. We've got to protect the national security of our country. And we've got to protect local communities. If people are threats to our community, as you said earlier, you support immigration enforcement of those who are threats. We do have to go after legitimate threats. We shouldn't be allowing anyone to game the system, to exploit the system. We shouldn't be allowing traffickers to take advantage of the broken system. So immigration enforcement really does need to prioritize safety. We can agree on that. Now, what do we do with the other folks who are in the country, some of whom have been in the country for a long time, many who've been here for more than 10 years, many who've been here for more than 20 years, many people who have roots in the country? Their children are going to our schools. They might have a small business. What do we do about those folks? That's the question on the table right now. Whether you agree with what's happening on the border or not, the question right now is, what do we do with what we're seeing in the country around enforcement? You mentioned the bishop's statement. I think the big takeaway from the bishops is that they're really pushing back against mass deportation as a strategy for dealing with this population.
But it's really not mass, because, if you look at how many migrants are being detained, it's 5% would be a hard number, all right, of all the people who were allowed in here under Biden. But I understand that. I would go a different way. I would. Well, you don't object to criminal aliens being deported immediately, do you?
Well, I think we do need to remove anyone who's a threat to the safety
All right,
of our.
So criminal aliens gone, and that includes DUIs, domestic services. Right. The problem is, according to Director Homan, who's an honest man. I mean, he's a hard. I was going to say hard. He's a hard guy, but when they raid looking for migrants that have judges' orders signed for deportation and criminals, when they raid, very often there are others with them, girlfriends, brothers, sisters, children, who are here without credentials, and they have to bring them all in. That's what the government says. Is that wrong?
Well, as you said, I do think we've got to target people who are threats to our local community, but that's not what we're seeing right now. The data are pretty clear, Bill. If we look at everybody, for example, who's been targeted and arrested and detained this year under the Trump administration, 2/3 of people don't have a criminal conviction. So that's the vast majority. We're talking about the overwhelming percentage of people who have been targeted.
Okay, but 1/3 with criminal interactions, that's a hell of a lot of people in danger. But I'm with you. We don't have a disagreement there. If there's another way, if there's another way to adjudicate peaceful, undocumented migrants, then we should explore that. Congress's responsibility, of course, to do that, and they don't do it. Okay.
There we agree. Yeah, we've got a
Now,
broken system, and both parties are at fault, and it's been broken for a long time. And that's the reason that we're in this predicament right now, because we've kicked the can, both the president, the White House, and Congress,
100%. You can't be
Democrats.
going a 1952 law and it's 2025 and you people sit around and do nothing. Now, the Catholic Church, if you look at the theology, are you Catholic?
I am, just like you,
Okay.
Bill. We're Catholics.
Okay. So we have to be compassionate to everybody who's poor and in a bad circumstance, and that includes undocumented migrants. And I am. I can prove it. But the Catholic Church, A, refuses to use the words undocumented, won't use it. And number two, portrays this as an issue where the government is the bad guy. The U.S. government is the bad guy. And I'll submit to you that the bishops are misguided because the government is trying to protect Americans from this massive wave that nobody has any control over. Do you see my point?
I see what you're saying. I would say that the bishops, and I worked for the bishops for a number of years. I worked for the Vatican for a number of years. I think what's really happening is that these religious leaders are responding to what their local communities are seeing across the country. They're responding to two things. They're responding to that, the reality of these actions of ICE and immigrant enforcement and the raids that are really ugly. They're brutal. I mean, we're talking about moms being separated from families. We're talking about, there's been situations where school teachers have been ripped out of schools, where parents have been ripped out of cars, where their kids are left behind. Nobody wants to see that. That's not the way to.
But that's not the rule. That is the exception.
I think that they're responding to that, though. They're seeing, you've seen the images coming out of Chicago, of Los Angeles, where we're deploying the Department of Homeland Security, but also the FBI, and in some cases, the National Guard and the military. Nobody wants to see this. It's not good. And in fact, it's turning off a lot of voters. A lot of people who supported Trump and said, yeah, we want a secure border. Yeah, we got to fix the immigration system. A lot of people are stepping back. He's losing in the Latino vote. So I think the bishops are responding to what they're seeing locally, but they're also responding to the Pope. Pope Leo, he's been outspoken about this, especially in the last couple months.
But that's his job. See,
right away.
But I'd like to interview Pope Leo. We're working on it, but I don't think he's going to do it. But I would say, Your Holiness, my first question after asking him for forgiveness would be, listen, every government, legitimate government, has an obligation to protect its people.
Yep.
And when you let 10 to 15 million unsupervised foreign nationals into a country, that's not protecting your people, Your Holiness, is it? I'd love to see how he answers that one. And they all fall back on the teacher in that school or the mom and I got it. But there is a tremendous problem here fostered by our own government under Biden. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I think the Holy Father would respond this way. I think he'd say, you're right. There's a place for borders. There's a place for governments managing immigration so that it's done in a way that's efficient and meets our national security needs and maybe even meets our economic needs. I think the Holy Father would probably agree with that. But he'd also say that when we lead with compassion, that when we honor the stranger, when we welcome the stranger, we'll be better off for it because it's the Christian thing to do. It's the right thing to do. But it's also the American thing to do. He's from America. He knows this is a country that's benefited from the contributions of migrants, that they're key to our economic resilience, our social resilience. They make us great as a country. And I think he'd remind us of that there's got to be a better way, that compassion.
Well, there's got to be a better way. You're right. But it isn't letting everybody in. And that is the impression that the Catholic Church is giving, not only the USA, but in Europe as well. Mr. Corbett, very good debate. We really appreciate you, and thank you for coming on today. Let's face it, the U.S. economy is under stress. National debt rising, trade war shaking the markets, and meanwhile, China is dumping the dollar and stockpiling gold. That's why I protected my savings with physical gold and silver through the only dealer I trust, American Hartford Gold. And you can do this. Get precious metals delivered to your door or placed in a tax-advantaged gold IRA. They'll even help you roll over your existing IRA or 401k, tax and penalty-free. With billions in precious metals delivered, thousands of five-star reviews, and an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, you can trust American Hartford Gold as I do. Please call 866-501-5201 or text BILL to 65532. Again, that's 866-501-5201 or text BILL to 65532. The cost of everything still rising, and many of us are relying on credit cards to cover essentials. If that debt is piling up, you're not alone. Americans now owe more than $1 trillion in credit card debt. You may have thought about calling American Financing, but hesitated because you don't want to lose your low mortgage rate. Well, good news, they created the Smart Equity Loan. It lets you tap into your home's equity without touching your current mortgage. Unlike a home equity line of credit, this loan has a fixed interest rate and one predictable monthly payment. No upfront or hidden fees. It only takes 10 minutes to get started, so please call 888-462-9557 or visit americanfinancing.net/bill. All right, I'm watching the Ken Burns Revolutionary War thing on PBS last night. Fell asleep. Literally fell asleep. Now, I know all about it, but it's my job to look at this stuff, historical stuff. It was so boring, I couldn't believe it. It was almost like they tried to make it boring. $30 million budget, the estimate is, on Burns' documentary. I can't even go back. So, here's my advice. If you read Killing the Witches and then read Killing England, both are exciting. You'll know more than if you watch the 8 episodes or whatever it is, 6 episodes of Burns. I'm sorry, Ken. Boring. I can't believe it because it's such an exciting topic. Thank you for watching and listening to the No Spin News. I'm Bill O'Reilly. We'll see you again tomorrow. Thank you for watching. To view full episodes of the No Spin News anytime, sign up to become a BillO'Reilly.com premium or concierge member today.